Welcome, everyone. Let's just dive right into this explainer, because there is a massive shift happening right now in the data world. We're going to explore why strapping conversational AI directly onto blazingly fast databases is actually creating some pretty dangerous chaos for business intelligence. And, more importantly, how we can fix it. We've officially entered an era where speed is no longer the bottleneck. Accuracy.
There's a quote that perfectly captures this whole situation. Basically, dropping LLMs onto ungoverned raw data is like handing every stakeholder a flamethrower. It's a total wildfire. Pre-AI, organizations were already suffering from these endless dashboard wars, right? Finance and sales would show up to a meeting with totally different numbers. But giving an unguided AI access to raw data, that doesn't just spark a disagreement. It literally hands everyone a flamethrower, turning those everyday metric disputes into an absolute inferno of conflicting information.
Just think about the sheer math of this for a second. AI now allows 50 different people across your company to generate 50 completely different, official-looking charts in a matter of seconds. If marketing, product, and finance all ask an AI chatbot for revenue, that AI is going to write 3 distinct, plausible SQL queries yielding 3 totally different totals. Everyone walks right into the boardroom completely convinced their chart is the absolute truth, and executive decision-making, it just grinds to a complete halt.
In the legacy era, building a conflicting report meant submitting a ticket and agonizingly waiting through a 3-week Jira sprint. Today, generating those conflicting charts takes exactly 5 seconds. No way around it, AI hasn't fixed the whose chart is right debate, it has exponentially accelerated the friction. We've basically speedrun our way into total organizational confusion.
Now, it's incredibly tempting to look at ultra-fast execution engines, like DuckDB or MotherDuck, and think they solve all our analytics problems. But when you combine high-speed compute with unanchored LLMs writing raw queries on the fly, you aren't actually getting deeper insights. You're just getting plausible, syntax-perfect hallucinations delivered in milliseconds. Sure, the code looks perfectly clean, but it might entirely miss your company's complex underlying logic for things like refunds or test accounts.
So, how do we clear the smoke? That brings us to part 1, building the semantic firewall. To stop these hallucinations from hitting our database, we absolutely have to fundamentally rethink where our business logic lives.
We desperately need a paradigm shift. In the old, legacy workflow, which is essentially a giant smoke hazard, metric formulas are scattered all over individual report canvases, and AI just fires raw SQL blindly into the database. What we want is clear skies. That means moving to a modern, governed workflow where logic is centralized in a code-first semantic layer. We're creating a single, unified source of truth that the AI must unequivocally follow.
You have to establish governed semantic modeling as a mandatory firewall before any high-speed engine computes data, and certainly before any AI agent presents it. By defining what a metric like net revenue actually means just one time in code, using tools like dbt or Cube, you ensure that whether a user is looking at a static dashboard or asking an AI chatbot, they're getting the exact same pre-tested mathematical answer every single time.
Okay, moving on to part 2, active chat versus passive visuals. Because, look, as great as conversational AI is, it isn't the magic bullet for every single scenario.
There's this really stark dichotomy in how we actually use data day to day. Ad hoc exploration is fantastic for deep dives, but conversational BI requires active effort. You actually have to think of a question and type it out. Let's be real, non-technical executives do not want to play prompt engineer every morning before they've had their coffee just to check the health of the business. They still desperately need passive visual summaries, scannable dashboards and automated alerts that give them the pulse of the company without typing a single word.
So, it's a massive misconception that drag-and-drop visuals and dashboards are dead. They absolutely aren't. What is dead is the slow, monolithic workflow of building them. Presentation layers are evolving into these lightweight, code-first data apps that sit cleanly on top of fast query engines. This decoupling means you still get the rich, spatial context and storytelling of a beautiful chart, but without the agonizing wait times.
Which brings us to part 3, the duck stack economy. Because shifting away from these monolithic BI tools radically changes the financial landscape of your data platform.
In the legacy era, you were forced into what we can basically call the commercial BI double dip. First, you paid massive fees to cloud warehouses just to process the queries. And then, you paid a bloated seat tax of $15 to $70 per user every single month just so stakeholders could look at a chart. It's a crazy business model that gets exponentially expensive as your company scales.
But look at the massive trade-off taking place now. By moving to the duck stack using open source engines like DuckDB alongside serverless compute, Your software subscription costs and those per-seat licensing fees basically drop off a cliff. However, your investments do shift elsewhere. Now you're going to spend money on variable pay-per-token API calls for your LLMs, and more importantly, you have to invest heavily in highly skilled semantic data engineering talent to build that underlying architecture.
Now, for those of you in highly regulated sectors like healthcare or finance, you're probably wondering, okay, but is this secure? The answer is yes, but the method changes. Enterprise security shifts from being locked inside a proprietary BI app's UI all the way down into rock-solid version-controlled semantic code. You isolate compute at the database level and enforce row-level security in your semantic pipelines. That ensures even if an AI agent goes rogue generating a query, it physically cannot bypass the hard-coded security guardrails. Let's head into our final section, the invisible BI team. The technology is clearly amazing, but what does this mean for the actual humans doing the work? Well, the traditional dashboard developer role, the one focused on just moving pixel-perfect boxes around a canvas to close a Jira ticket, that's rapidly fading. AI is coming for that task for sure, but this makes way for a truly indispensable role, the semantic engineer, or the context architect. The new job is all about building semantic models, configuring API integrations, and essentially teaching the AI exactly how the business works behind the scenes.
This forces a massive socio-technical shift. Really, it's product management for data. Data teams used to get so lost in the sauce, debating exactly which raw SQL calculation to use. But with AI generating syntax instantly, the job isn't just calculating the number anymore. It's managing the deep business context around the number. It's asking, why does this metric actually matter to leadership, and what exact action do we take when it drops by 5%?
But watch out, because this leads to a dangerous trap we call the plumbing paradox. As your data team transitions from presenting flashy front-end dashboards to being an invisible back-end force multiplier, the pipes stop leaking. Things run smooth. But when everything works flawlessly, leadership might mistakenly assume the AI just did all the heavy lifting itself, and suddenly you risk having executives question the ROI of your entire data team. Not good.
So you can't just be invisible. You have to proactively market your impact. You prove your value by showing leadership the metrics that actually matter. Highlight the massive infrastructure cost efficiencies. Show them how latency dropped from minutes down to milliseconds. Track how your semantic firewall prevented AI hallucinations, and demonstrate that stakeholders now get highly trusted, accurate answers in 10 seconds instead of waiting 3 agonizing weeks for a sprint to finish.
I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder as you evaluate your own data stack. In this new era of instant compute and AI, the visual dashboard is really just the surface. True intelligence lies in the governed semantic context beneath it all. So ask yourself, are you still just building dashboards, or are you managing context? Thank you so much for joining this explainer. I hope this helps you build faster, safer, and infinitely smarter data platforms. Catch you next time.